Hi, my name is Tori, and today I'm going to be talking about the Be the Brightest Stars campaign by Starbucks for South Korea. For some background on Starbucks, their mission is to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. And they do this by making sure that everything that they do is through the lens of humanity. Their values include creating a culture of warmth and belonging where everyone is welcome, acting with courage and challenging the status quo and finding new ways to grow, being present, connecting with transparency, dignity, and respect, and delivering the very best in all that they do, holding themselves accountable for results. For some background on the company, the first location of Starbucks opened in Seattle's Pike Place Market in 1971. And then in 1996, Starbucks opened its first stores in Japan and Singapore. In 1999, Starbucks opened its first location in South Korea. By 2019, 20 years later, South Korea had a total of more than 1,300 stores. According to Statista, the top 3 coffee chains in South Korea as of 2018 were Iria Coffee, which is based in South Korea. Starbucks was ranked second, which is based in the United States. And third, it was a Twosome Place, which is also based in South Korea. There were a couple main challenges and threats to having Starbucks in South Korea. The biggest challenge is that Starbucks is operating in a host country, unlike its top competitors, Idia Coffee and a Twosome Place, which are located in South Korea. At first, customers weren't used to the idea of self-service, so we are used to the idea of picking up drinks at the counter and going, but South Koreans weren't used to the self-service idea. Another challenge was that Starbucks was considered expensive and a luxury brand. They also struggled with the concept of lingering customers. So in the United States, we usually go to Starbucks and take our coffee to go, but in South Korea, the culture is different, and it's usually a sit-down culture. Another challenge for when Starbucks Korea first opened was that the recipes weren't developed for Korean taste. Starbucks' success in South Korea can be attributed to localization, or what researchers call Starbucksization. In terms of the problem that they had earlier of lingering customers, Starbucks Korea originally provided internet and comfortable seating so that they could accommodate for South Korean culture. And when South Koreans adopted more of a poly culture or a fast culture, and instead of lingering, they were moving quickly, Starbucks adapted and they accommodated again by developing a siren order service in 2014, which is basically an app that people could order their drinks on online and then come in and pick their drinks up in store. In the beginning stages of Starbucks being in South Korea, they were criticized for their drinks costing more than their competitors, but they've since taken that high-end brand identity in stride, and they've opened some reserve branches, and these reserve branches have a greater variety of things people can purchase at these stores, and they cost a little bit more. Starbucks South Korea has also tailored their menu items to Korean tastes and the Korean palate. So on the right, there's a picture of a sweet potato frappuccino, where we have pumpkin spice lattes and pumpkin spice frappuccinos in the United States. They have sweet potato frappuccinos. Starbucks South Korea locations are also favored by landlords, whereas McDonald's, another American brand, is not so favored by landlords in South Korea. In addition to this, another strength is that Starbucks South Korea has a community store program which invests in young people seeking opportunities, promotes environmental sustainability, and celebrates Korean cultural heritage. Starbucks works with local nonprofits in South Korea to fund innovative programs that empower the local community. Now for some background on South Korea. In 1945, Japanese occupation ended after World War II, and Soviet troops occupied the north part of the 30th parallel, and U.S. troops occupied the south part. And in 1948, the Republic of Korea was proclaimed. 1950, South Korea declared independence and North Korea invaded, which caused the Korean War to begin, and it ended in 1953. In 1961, there was a military coup which led to dictatorship, and in the 1980s, martial law ended, and South Korea began to return to democracy, although North Korea remains totalitarian. From the 1990s to today, there has been ongoing tensions between North Korea and South Korea. South Korea has a democratic political system, and according to the Freedom House Democracy Index, they had a score of 83 out of 100. The 1988 Constitution gives executive power to a directly elected president who serves a 5-year term. The country does struggle with minority rights and social integration, but personal freedoms are generally respected. There is also a struggle with political expression due to the legal bans on pro-North Korean activity, which can be subjective. And the Freedom House Democracy Index does note that the country does have severe corruption due to ensnared successive governments and executives from the country's largest companies in recent years. In terms of South Korea's Corruption Perception Index, they scored a 59 out of 100, and they had a rank of 39 out of 198, and for reference, the US is ranked 23rd out of 198 and has a score of 69 out of 100. According to the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index of 2019, a lot of this corruption can be attributed to high-ranking officials being indicted for corruption, which includes bribery, document fraud, embezzlement, and collusion. And some of the things that South Korea has done to combat this is the Kim Yong-ran Act of 2016, which has punishments for those convicted of taking bribes, and it applies to government officials, their spouses, journalists, and educators. South Korea also has the High-Ranking Officials Corruption Investigation Agency, which was developed in 2019, and it will begin in July of this year to focus on corruption allegations against public officials, legislators, prosecutors, judges, and the president. And it can unilaterally indict police officers, prosecutors, and judges. And this faced opposition before it was created. According to the UN's World Economic Situation and Prospects Report of 2020, both North and South Korea were labeled as developing economies. South Korea has an open market economy. In 2018, South Korea was number 14 in the world for its GDP, number 5 for total exports, number 10 for total imports. And its top exports are integrated circuits, refined petroleum, cars, vehicle parts, and office machine parts. The country exports mostly to China, the US, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and Japan, and it imports mostly from China, the US, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and Germany. In terms of South Korea's media system, it's considered generally free and competitive. A lot of the reporting is on government and corporate corruption, and defamation law sentences in South Korea are up to 7 years in prison. This creates a level of self-censorship, and major news outlets face political interference from managers and the government. Korean national security law also states that any media that favors North Korea can be censored and lead to prosecution. All North Korean media is banned, and the fight against fake news is also considered a risk to national security. From 2008 to 2014, South Korea adult literacy rates remained stable at around 99%. In terms of South Korea's traditional media penetration, newspaper and radio are not as popular as TV, and the number of Koreans reading newspapers has declined over the last few years. Many newspapers have chosen to cut costs and focus on innovating their digital technology instead. There has been a slight decrease in TV usage from levels of 95% in 2011, but TV is still generally popular. KBS News is a public broadcaster, and it's the most widely used offline source. SBS News is a popular TV news outlet that has invested heavily in its online news brand, and it does better online than KBS News. And other cable news channels are owned by newspapers and have increased in popularity, while 24-hour cable news channels have lost market share in recent years. South Korea is considered one of the best connected countries in the world. In 2018, its internet penetration rate was about 96%, and the internet usage rate was at 91.6%. South Korea has government-established policies and programs that enable nationwide adoption of broadband internet, which causes an increase in the development of wireless technology and more advanced digital infrastructure, as you can tell by Starbucks' siren order system that I mentioned earlier. According to a survey, internet users between ages 20 and 29 spend about 24.2 hours on the internet per week, which is about 14% of their time. Facebook is South Korea's most popular social media platform as of 2018. Second is Kakao Story, which is a photo sharing app similar to Instagram. Third is Instagram. Fourth is Twitter, and fifth is Neighbor Band, which is another Korean social media app which focuses on group communication, and it's similar to Facebook. When looking at Hofstede's insights, you can see that South Korea has high power distance, which means that there is an obedience and respect for elders and people with higher status. It's generally low individualism, so it's a very collectivist culture with interest in group, indirect communication style, and interpersonal communication. It has moderate masculinity at 39, which shows that there's general distinctions between what women and men are expected to do, and they place value in achievement. There's also high insurgency avoidance, which means that South Koreans are security seeking, they need structure, they prefer rules, and they have less tolerance for ambiguities and risk. There's also extremely high long-term orientation, which means South Korea culture values thrift and savings, future rewards, and they're more willing to subordinate themselves for a purpose. Finally, South Korea has low indulgence, which means that gratification needs to be curbed, and it's regulated by strict social norms and a concern for order. So something that is really relevant to South Korean culture and this campaign specifically is K-pop and BTS. And if you're wondering what K-pop is, it's short for Korean popular music, and it actually is also popular in the United States and worldwide. BTS, which is a K-pop group, was the most popular K-pop artist on YouTube in 2019, and BTS had more than 11 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Hollywood Reporter estimated that BTS contributed $4.65 billion to South Korea's GDP in 2018. They said that they could consider BTS to be in the same league as Samsung and Hyundai. As I mentioned earlier, auto parts are very important to the Korean economy, and putting them in the same category as BTS is not completely true. They still generate a lot more revenue than BTS, but BTS does generate a lot of money. Starbucks launched a campaign that collaborated with BTS and included limited edition Be the Brightest Stars beverages, food, and merchandise sold exclusively in South Korea. This campaign was the first step in Starbucks Korea's year-long campaign to create opportunity for Korean youth throughout 2020. A portion of the sales from the collaboration was donated to the Beautiful Foundation's Opportunity Youth Independence Project, which is a South Korean nonprofit organization, and their mission is to support career and educational development programs for young people leaving children's homes to start their adult lives. The theme in the campaign was making the dreams of young people in South Korea come true, and the key messages of the campaign that were frequently seen through their messaging were Be the Brightest Stars and uplifting youth in South Korea. The goal of the campaign was to increase Starbucks' sales in South Korea and to raise money for the Beautiful Foundation's Opportunity Youth Independence Project. And the timeline for the campaign was from January 21st, 2020 to February 6th, 2020. The primary audience for this campaign is South Korean BTS fans, ranging in age from 10 to 30 and mostly female. The secondary audience is South Koreans aged 30 and up, and those who support the Beautiful Foundation's Opportunity Youth Independence Project. According to Fast Company, a Korean study estimated that 83% of BTS's fans are female and 45% are between the ages of 10 and 30. For some of the psychographics, 95% of South Korean adults own a smartphone, and about 20% of the population, which is 10 million people, are at serious risk of internet addiction. South Korea, they have a thing called PC Bang, which is basically what we call an internet cafe. According to the owner of a internet cafe in South Korea, she said, "I've seen a lot of customers come here late in the afternoon and leave the next morning. That's pretty common." So a lot of people stay at these cafes for a long time. They're comfy chairs, internet, and people can stay there for a while. 35% of 20 to 29-year-olds in South Korea drink 1 cup of coffee per day. 25% of 20 to 29-year-olds in South Korea drink 2 cups of coffee per day. The campaign's output objective is to implement a series of social media content, special events, and earned media to reach the target audience. The campaign's informational impact objective is to increase awareness of Starbucks Korea and the Beautiful Foundation's Opportunity Youth Independence Project. The attitudinal impact objective is to increase brand loyalty to Starbucks Korea over South Korean-based coffee companies like Idea Coffee and A Tucson Place, and the behavioral impact objective is to increase consumption at Starbucks Korea. The strategies of the campaign were to create strong associations with BTS's existing brand and fan base, to consider collectivist culture for all aspects of the campaign, and to share impactful owned media and social media content throughout the campaign. The tactics for this campaign included a series of actions and special events. So Starbucks Korea had a series of limited edition purple products that were reminiscent of a starry night. They had purple drinks, purple macaroons, purple cheesecake and cupcakes, and they had limited edition merchandise. They also played BTS's song Make It Right throughout all of the South Korean Starbucks locations during the campaign period. And they tailored social media content to the campaign and hosted a sweepstakes on their social media. To announce the campaign, Starbucks South Korea sent out a media release on their website, and it generated a good amount of earned media by both South Korean news outlets and American news outlets. These are some examples of the social media posts that Starbucks Korea posted during the campaign period. And this is a video they posted on YouTube for the campaign. Korean media named public relations Hongbo for government sources, and they named PR public relations for corporate publicity. So this campaign by Starbucks would be considered public relations and not Hongbo. When looking at this campaign and its relation to South Korea's cultural dimensions, you can see that they were considerate of the culture's high long-term orientation. South Koreans value thrift and savings and future rewards, and this does contradict the aspect of the campaign that includes spending on BTS-themed merchandise, but it's balanced out by the incorporation of the charity. This touches on South Koreans' willingness to subordinate oneself for a purpose. And the campaign also is considerate of the low individualism in South Korean culture. So because South Koreans have a collectivist culture, there's an interest in group rather than individual interest. Again, the partnership with the Beautiful Foundation's Opportunity Youth Independence Project is effective in this scenario. This campaign also considers the need for South Korean people to have pride in their culture and to separate themselves from North Korea. So there are legal bans on pro-North Korean activity, as I mentioned before, and there are still existing tensions with North Korea. So this has kind of prompted South Korean pride in the creation and the success of BTS, which originated in South Korea. As I mentioned earlier too, there's also current struggles with minority rights and social integration in South Korea, and so by doing this campaign as part of their corporate social responsibility, it's picking a cause that isn't entirely controversial because it's focusing on the development and uplifting of impoverished youth. This campaign also demonstrates Starbucks Korea's knowledge of the South Korean economy and that BTS contributed billions of dollars to South Korea's GDP in 2018. So they saw an opportunity in what South Koreans were willing to spend money on, and they took it. This campaign also considers the fact that South Korea is one of the best connected countries in the world, and that social media content is very important to this campaign. It also considers the PC Bang internet culture and that 95% of South Korean adults own a smartphone, and that young BTS fans are heavily using the internet, and that can be used to strengthen bonds with South Korean Starbucks locations. And by playing the BTS song at the Starbucks stores, that people will want to stay and hear it play and listen to it. According to the Korea Herald, a lot of the Starbucks locations had already sold out of the BTS merchandise within a day of the campaign starting. A Starbucks worker said that in the morning they saw a line of fans lining up around the store to get the merchandise, and the demand was so high that Starbucks implemented a one person, one item rule, but nearly every store sold out of merchandise quickly. After one of the BTS band members was seen wearing one of the keychains from the collaboration, these keychains began selling out so fast, and some of the items were even resold online for double the original prices. International fans are also requesting that the campaign goes beyond South Korea. Two big recommendations and critiques for this campaign are to create more content featuring the Beautiful Foundation Opportunities Youth Independence Project, creating more content that showed the people that the campaign will be benefiting would tie into South Korea's collectivist culture more. It would also be great for the campaign to publicize how much of an impact the campaign had on the nonprofit organization, and to remind South Koreans of the impact of the campaign in terms of uplifting the country's youth, because collectivist culture does value the group over the individual. In summary, Starbucks South Korea's Be the Brightest Stars campaign is a good example of South Korean corporate public relations for its merging of cultural factors and existing missions and beliefs held by the company. Some key takeaways from this campaign are that this campaign created a balance between collectivist culture and modern-day consumerism. It found an existing brand and fan base in BTS and made associations with Starbucks' own brand, and it realized the modern day potential of the internet and technology in South Korea.